I'm violent.
You're not allowed to be here.
Oh my god. Yep, important.
I've got like boom.
Of course, classic Ouija board demon comes through.
Sneaking up on us is this date at the end of May where something is going to happen, and
I have chills.
it's pieces of a puzzle, it's layers.
Thanks for playing with us.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
This is Two Girls, One Ghost.
Two girls, one ghost. And something might happen today.
It is May 27th, 2025, and we are unsure because we were recording this before the date if everything is okay.
Because as you'll come to find out, by the end of this episode, something weird's happening.
It certainly is. And who better to experience it with us than Beckie Galentine of MyBloodyGalentine.
We did a really fun investigation of the Salem Witch Board Museum with Beckie, and we got a bunch of information about the history of the museum from John, who owns it, and his own personal experience with collecting. He has over 600 boards, and then Beckie has her own collection. So this episode, you'll get a mix of some really awesome conversations and stories from Beckie, her own experience, her collections, her very poetic Mary Shelley life.
And I have a secret to tell everyone. I played a Ouija board. Ah! Tune in. Find out. Watch now.
Continue watching. Enjoy. Thank you for being here, Beckie.
No problem.
I feel like we need to talk about the wheelchair behind you because it's for sure haunted, right?
It actually is. When I grew up, like the first haunted location that I was ever exposed to was called Torrance State Hospital. And it was like one of those places that, I'm talking like 16 years old, that everyone would say, oh, you think you like ghosts? Try going to Torrance, like try checking out Torrance. And so it became almost like a local legend, even though it existed. And it was dilapidated. There were pictures of it that spray painted, everything. It was the first time I was ever exposed to the word lobotomy. And obviously, like, I understand the nuance of respecting mental health and psychiatric facilities in the paranormal a little bit differently now. But at the time, as a kid, it was like this place that, you know, you couldn't get in. They would say you can't get in. But some people, they tucked and rolled fast enough and they could get in. So 2 years ago, a friend reached out to me and she said, I have a wheelchair and it's from Torrance, which was the only, like I said, local haunted place that we even had mentioned where I was from. And she said, my boyfriend found it. Basically, there were also tunnels. So like when you're thinking about legends and these stories that build up, it's like you've got this haunted old hospital and tunnels underneath, and sometimes you can get in, but you really can't get in, and some people don't make it out, whatever. There's rituals, like they come up with all these stories. And he said that he was driving for FedEx and he saw someone, he dropped something off there, and he said, I'd love to get into the old hospital. And the lady said, if you come after hours, I will sneak something through the tunnels for you to take.
Oh no. My gosh.
The wheelchair in my house, it was snuck through the tunnels and taken after hours. Obviously not functional. It wasn't like she took something from there. And they kept it in their shed outside for a couple of years and then started to feel like, well, we don't even know why we have this because we don't want to bring it into the house, whatever energy it has. And I said, Torrance is like the first place that I ever even conceptualized as being haunted. And it's now demolished. So it's like a little piece of something that doesn't exist anymore. And it's from Pennsylvania. So I don't have too much from where I'm from. And it's just something that I was like, I can't believe it.
That's wild. That's like
so cool.
Just proof that sometimes making small talk with the right person can just lead. I'm sure that guy never thought that his like little side comment would actually lead to a wheelchair being like dragged through the tunnel in the middle of the night or after hours for him to take.
It felt like an illicit little like mission that was being conducted.
What a side quest.
Yeah. Also, I love that you are the person that people go to and they're like, hey, Beckie, I have this weird, like, creepy thing in my shed. Do you want it?
I get that a lot. Like, I just posted a video and it had 3 million views. And most of the comments were, why do people give you these things? I'm like, I don't know. Like, once you get one, it just snowballs. And and someone commented, why did people send you this? But yeah, I get this messages that are like, hey, I saw something that I think you might like. And I'm telling you, some of the messages that I get are the most wild things. There should just be like a chat dialogue of the things that people try to send me.
Well, I do feel like anything could be haunted. And I feel like this is a perfect segue to talk a little bit about you, Beckie, because you are a fellow spooky ghoul like us. But for people who don't know you, can you talk a little bit about your history, how you got into spooky things, and then about your own personal haunted collection, and maybe give us a taste of what your favorite haunted object is?
When I tell people my story, I always say it kind of sounds like it was made up. I grew up in an antique store. Like, I did not stand a chance to not be weird. Like, no. We had this house that was actually a barn converted into a house, and we lived upstairs, dead people's things downstairs everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
And my parents, they mostly collected traditional antiques. My mom was more into the dolls, so I went to a lot of doll shows growing up. So I was very familiarized with dolls and never saw them as like creepy or haunted. So like the trope is the haunted doll thing. And I'm more like, just because a doll's old doesn't mean it's haunted. A lot of people are trying to like capitalize on that. Right. And then I spent most of my youth just like leafing through. I loved going through the greeting cards, the worthless stuff that wasn't being appraised for these people who had recently passed. So my brother and I would look at birthday cards, and it just like the artwork of some of these were like 60s, like they had like cute teddy bears and stuff on them. And, you know, going through that, and like soaps were another thing that weren't appraised in the estate sales. And there's even been some times where my mom said, I know that person was watching me go through her things. Like, so that's definitely where it started. But I think I deviated from that traditional, like, folk art, Americana, like antiques, like primitives and stuff like that. So it took a while for my parents to understand where I was going with it. So I liked the old things. I got the idea, but as I grew older, I started getting into talking boards, which was, I would say, around 2012. Back then, I was like, all these people have these huge Ouija board collections, and I have 4. But now it's like I've been collecting for over a decade. But that was my segue into it, and I don't know why. It was just like really impressed with the idea of that. And then, you know, I just started getting into other things along the way. They're like, oh, well, you collect Ouija boards, so you'll probably like this. And I had always been drawn to cemeteries as well, but I saw them as, I was a loser in a small town. I'm not like exaggerating, like a literal like person that people were like, you're strange. And so I would hang out in the cemetery because I wanted to make art, but I didn't want to be judged, and I didn't want people to say, look at that girl, she thinks she's a photographer, she thinks she's important. So the cemetery was a way for me to connect with people in some way and artwork in some way without anyone else looking in. Nobody really paid attention to the old cemeteries.
You really are just a Mary Shelley. It's very poetic.
I know, but also I want to fight your hometown for you.
Now they're nice to me.
Of course.
Like, oh, wow, I love that you're just doing what you want to do. But back then, it was just, that was literally the words people would say. You think you're something. And it's like crabs in a bucket mentality. So
also, but like maybe they manifested a little bit for you too, because it sounds like they believe so much that like you could be something.
Yeah, how dare you?
Look and now
you are. But as I got older, it didn't really make sense. It's like, oh, I like cemeteries, I like antiques, I like odd things that I would find, but it never really blended together until recently. And then in 2019, I went to mortuary school. I worked through the pandemic as an embalmer, and that's when I started posting about like the haunted locations and stuff. So and when I started, I would say, allegedly. Everything's allegedly haunted because I was too afraid to tell the world that I believed in ghosts. And eventually all those things kind of cohesively went together and made more sense. And I started being able to articulate like my own ideas about it. So it's just always been kind of my life. And some people do not understand it. And this week really reinforced that, where I see like beauty in lost things and things left behind, because I think I maybe felt that way in my life. So I'm like, oh, this old letter with a lock of hair, I think it's beautiful and fantastic. And I feel kind of sad for it. And people are like, oh, you're a creep and a serial killer or something. So I think that I just kind of have been drawn to things that I relate to.
Right. We understand that. And I think, especially like, I love that you were drawn to greeting cards. And I feel like there's like such intention behind a human being picking that out for someone. Like there's almost so much humanity in it that maybe some people aren't seeing it that way. But like, I feel like we do.
I know. I feel like similar to you, whenever I go into an antique shop, I gravitate towards the cards and the old photos because then I'm like, these are people who like posed for this photo or like wrote this card and I feel so bad. Like, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to buy them and sometimes I do.
You know, and my mom, when she was dealing in antiques, nobody wanted the old photos. You could get them for like $10 and $15. You couldn't even give them away. And now the things I collect, my mom laughs because she's like, I can't believe you want those things. But to me, I don't care if it's an antique Tiffany lamp or something that's worth thousands of dollars. I care that it's like, this is the closest I'll ever get to this person who lived 140 years ago. It's the closest anyone will get.
It's magical.
You see people who kind of like use these things for art and they paint over their face. I'm like, that's their last connection.
I know. Okay, well, living amongst your collection, have you experienced anything paranormal?
For the most part, it's very, very infrequent. The first thing I remember experiencing is I waited in line at this estate sale in Pittsburgh to get this hair wreath, and it has a woman in the center. And it's not an intricate example. It had water damage, but it was the first time I had access to buying a human hair wreath. And
can you explain that further?
Yes.
I have never heard of that, never seen.
I have a lot of them now. But
where do you keep them?
In my house. All over my house. Back in the like 1860s to 1890s, even early 1900s, and now it's kind of making a revival. But 1860s, you started seeing a lot of human hair being done with art. So the first times you're seeing this are like little mourning brooches. So they'll say like in memory of, and it'll have a lock of hair. And then they started getting creative and they would add gold filigree. But it kind of evolved and people started making flowers out of it. So there's a specific way that they would loop and curl this hair to make it look like flowers. And these would take years to make.
Oh my gosh, wait, these are actually
Me too.
Super beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Whoa.
Oh yeah. So they would make an entire wreath, like a Christmas wreath, out of human hair. They're often horseshoe shaped. People often have the misconception that they're from deceased loved ones, but it's mainly just an heirloom. Sometimes they would use it and they would keep on their dresser a hair receiver. So when they're brushing their hair, they're collecting a little bit at a time. And then some of them would literally take years to make.
This is wild.
These are
my
beautiful.
Gosh.
And so
And
intricate.
like, I feel like if I saw this in someone's house, I wouldn't know that it was human hair.
Yeah.
No, that's what people say. And some of them have glass beads and pearls, and they can be so intricate. They're very unique. And every time I see one, I'm like, oh, I have to have it.
Wow.
I just bought one that has all of the names written around it with like a calligraphy pen.
Oh my gosh, beautiful.
That is really cool.
Wow.
I feel like that's a cool family thing to do.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I wish I had one for my family.
Something
you could start making one.
But there is something so witchy about like braiding your hair with someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of intention in it. And I talk about this a lot too, where this is how they were remembering people. And so when you think about why are our ghosts always from the 1850s and the 1900s? Well, look at how they were memorializing people and drawing them in. They're like, I want to keep you around.
Right.
You'll clean out a house that has an attic or something and you'll find locks of hair. I found once a candle that said that Ma held this candle when she died in 1897 and it had 2 locks of hair next to it. You will find like really unique personal things. And that was actually, like I said, the first hair wreath that I brought home. I had experiences. And I don't typically think that hair has to be haunted, but I had waited in line at this estate sale for this hair wreath with this woman, and it was more expensive than it should have been. And I hung it on my wall. But she's crooked in the frame. So you have this lady surrounded by hair and she's sideways. And so I didn't want to open the frame because it's fragile. It was water damaged.
Right.
So I poked a pencil in there And because I did that, I'm guessing that's when things got strange. So it wasn't like screwed into the wall and for some reason fell on the floor. And I was like, what happened? Like, that's crazy. Then I just put it back up. And then I had a dream about her where she was sitting on the edge of the bed, but I couldn't move. I had like sleep paralysis and she was just there laughing. And then I talked to my roommate and they're like, yeah, I dreamt about that lady in the picture. And I was like, oh my gosh,
What?
she does not want to be straightened in that frame. So she's still crooked in the frame to this day. And there were just like a couple strange things after I brought that home. And we unanimously decided like we leave the lady alone in her frame. And nothing's happened since. But that was 9 years ago now. And I would say like maybe every 2 years, something strange happens. Like maybe she's always been crooked in the frame and her family put her that way. I don't know.
And she likes it that way.
Now you're her keeper.
Yeah. And I have done really heavy due diligence with these things. If they have names, actually, they don't even have to have names. One time I took an address off the back of a portrait and I found the whole family history and who was in the photo. And
So
it was
cool.
their names were Myrtle and Roscoe Lopp, and they had passed away tragically, one of meningitis and the other one had measles, I believe. And
Geez.
I had found their whole history just because I found the address. And then I went through like the archives of this small Midwest town until I found them. And I found their like great nephew. Like that was the last person in the lineage. But I go out of my way to try and reunite these pieces. And if I can't find anyone, then I feel entitled to keep it. But I do try to return them to families if it's possible.
Oh,
Love
I
that.
would love if someone reached out to me and they're like, "Hey, I found something that I think belonged to an ancestor." I would like I would
Feel
melt.
so connected to it.
That is so beautiful. I love your approach.
Yeah, I've had really awesome conversations too. Some of the haunted locations that I've researched that weren't really well known, they're like, my aunt lived in that house, or the candle actually with the human hair. The situation was her husband was the last living relative associated with that piece, and she was only related by marriage. And she said, I have nothing to do with it. And I'm just glad it's going somewhere. And that was it. She just threw it on eBay. I'm like, this was a candle someone held while they were dying. Like the thought, like, cause they say go to the light. So she's holding this candle.
Literally
and passing
go to
away.
the
Like,
light.
that is one of the most, I think, sentimental and like energetically unique pieces in my collection.
You're making me want to start a personal
Become a
collection
collector.
so badly.
Just start rooting around at estate sales.
You'll have to let us know next time you're going to an estate sale and we'll tag along.
We'll tag along. Yeah. Okay, wait. So your interest in talking boards, was that the first thing that you started collecting?
Actually, the first thing I started collecting was My Little Pony, but that's I still like it. And that's why people are shocked. I'm like, but someone designed each and every single one of those. And I think I don't know. I just think it's like magic. And when I talk about it that way, people say that doesn't really make sense. And I'm like, yes, it does. I believe in magic. I believe in like bringing yourself into your own reality. And I think that was kind of like my segue into collecting.
Hey, Corinne.
Hey.
Do you want to glow this summer?
Obviously.
Well, we have the perfect solution to get you glowing. It's one of our favorite brands, Cymbiotika, and we're going to set you up with 20% off so you can try some of our favorite products.
Whether your goal is radiant skin, better gut health, which is definitely mine.
Both of ours shared.
Or just more energy, Cymbiotika has clean ingredients and powerful supplements that will help you feel good all summer long. This is my favorite product, the Irish sea moss. It has a prebiotic that has aloe vera in it, so my skin definitely gets way more hydrated. So I have been putting it in a drink every single morning and having it, and it has helped me with my tummy aches.
One of my other favorite products is the magnesium L-threonate, and it helps with brain fog, which I experience so much of. It also helps with sleep, which who doesn't want better sleep?
No, we need that, especially after hearing all the spooky stories on this podcast.
Seriously.
Their liquid packets are so easy to just put in the purse, on the go, whatever.
And they taste good. So go to Cymbiotika.com/TGOG to get 20% off plus free shipping. That's CYMBIOTIKA.com/TGOG for 20% off plus free shipping.
Yeah, talking boards, I just got in a mood one day and I was like, did they used to make those a long time ago? And I typed in like antique Ouija board on eBay, and some magician in Texas was selling her collection. So I was able to buy like 4 or 5 of them for like way less than they were selling. And those were my first ones. It's a crystal gazer sitting right across the room right now. And then I bought one from 1909. And that's when I just really started getting into them. But there's people in that community that have been doing this for years longer than I had. So I just had my little couple of boards. And at first, my parents didn't understand because I grew up in a household where my dad burnt one, the blue ghost one. He was like, these are not good. And so I think people think that this has always been embraced. But now my own father will find them for me. He'll say, I found an old Ouija board at a yard sale or something.
I love that.
It's just a really unique innovation that is like steeped in American lore. Like we started in Baltimore. It became like this back and forth between multiple men fighting for the copyright, which is weird because women were doing it first in spiritualist communities.
Right.
They call it the mystifying oracle for a reason. I think it can never truly be explained. You know, there's people who say, oh, it's idiomotor effect, but there's just such an air of mystery about it that, you know, it really comes down to, do you believe or do you not believe? There's no like definitive, this is exactly this with it.
Wait, so what do you believe? Do you think it's idiomotor, or do you think that we're channeling something, that we're making contact?
I used to believe that it was idiomotor for a long time. And then I was like, can you really truly believe or prove one way or the other? You can say that, you can dismiss it as that, that's fine. But can we truly also say that we know for sure that a spirit is not helping you select those answers, even if you're doing it subconsciously? Like we just cannot prove that if you believe in the supernatural. Yeah. So for me, like I said, I just think it's like open. I like to see what people receive while they're investigating and how they interpret it.
Well, this is a perfect transition into what we 3 did together. Which, Beckie, you posted a picture on Instagram, and our listeners freaked out a little bit because Corinne, for the last 8 years of our podcast, has been so adamant that she will not do a Ouija board.
I don't know what came over me that night, because I still kind of feel like I never will again. But just in the moment, right there, surrounded by Ouija boards with you, Beckie, who collects them, like suddenly I feel like you took away some of the fear that I had with them. And so I was like, well, if I'm ever going to do it, this is probably the time to do it.
Yeah.
Well, you didn't mention your apprehension. Most people will tell me I'm not comfortable. And I say, okay, fine. Like if I go to a location that has rules against it, I don't try to fight it. I don't try to convince people out of their comfort zone. I say, okay, because I would never want to put anyone in a position where they didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
However, I think that, and like you're also led in with the owner of the museum, John, who he's one of the biggest historians on talking boards. And his beliefs are pretty benign about them.
Very. He
sees the love of the game and the novelty, and he feels similarly with he never wants to truly dispel the mystery of the board. But that it's like when you're exposed in that way, you're in a room with how many are in there, and
hundreds.
They're not flying off the walls. You know, people say they have experiences there, and people have sent obviously some very unique stories in with the boards that they're sending in. But I think there's a comfort level that you have, and you knew that it was coming from a place of respect.
Yeah, I feel like I have a pretty good read on like the energy of a place too. And I felt primarily like very comfortable there. I am a big believer. Like this is kind of my rule when I go antiquing, where it's like, I won't purchase something unless I love it so much, because if it is haunted, at least whoever's haunting it is going to appreciate my love for the item, that maybe the haunting won't be so bad. And I feel like that is kind of what I was feeling at the Ouija Board Museum, where it was like there was so much love and admiration and respect for the boards and the craft and the craftsmanship that I was just like, oh, this feels respected. Like it feels like if these boards had anything attached to them, or if they had an energy that was like permeating beyond just like a normal object, that it also felt respected and appreciated being there. That's why I made a game time decision. I didn't tell you, Beckie. I just did it.
I also feel like because we've spent the last couple of years dipping our toes into the paranormal investigation world a little bit more, we've learned that it's so much about intention. And we set our own intentions. We were very clear, like we didn't want to invite, and we, I think, collectively can agree, we're not actively being like, hey, demons, like, or something dark come through. We were just like, hey, we're curious. If there are any spirits here, we'd love to talk to you. So that helped, I think, ease our minds.
Yeah, it wasn't like another investigation that we previously had where we were led to a closet with a Ouija board. And then I was like, this feels not good. I'm not doing this.
I feel like Ouija boards are the one tool that people trivialize the most too. So more people have bad experiences with it because they start out disrespectfully. Nobody's sitting there going, oh, I'm going to cut my hand and put blood on a spirit box. I'm going to do, a digital recorder. But then all of a sudden when it comes to the Ouija board, they're like, oh yeah, we're going to do all this crazy stuff to it. We're going to, draw a pentagram and blood and then do, or like they throw it, they make jokes about it. And so it's the most disrespected one. So if you're bringing that energy into it, you're automatically doing that. And again, other tools don't face that same stigma. So I think that's part of it too. I've gone through different phases with my experiences with them. And now I'm just kind of like, you know what? I'm not going to listen, especially in the paranormal community. You'll hear, number one, I hear every possession I've ever encountered started with the Ouija board. And I know this person, it ruined their entire life. I love everything in your house but the Ouija boards. Okay, you could maybe get me 10 years ago. But now it's been over a decade, and I can say you may feel unsafe, and you're entitled to feel that way and not have them around. But I have lived with about 100 of them for a decade, and before that, I just, I still had antique ones in my home. So if something were going to happen, and they're like, but it might get you later down in your life, later along the road. I'm like, okay, at what point do we give up this fear mongering?
Honestly, a human being is more likely to get us at some point in our life than a spirit attached to a Ouija board.
And there are so many things that are akin to a Ouija board, and only, not even just Ouija because that's the brand name, but like only the Ouija board is the one that gets like the weird stigma. There's other games that are similar. There's other tools that work similarly. Like the old rotary phones have the alphabet on it. Like you could do the same thing. You could use your finger and it's just people make them on the back of a napkin. But I guess at some point everyone decided
that's the society we live in. So there's always going to be this, I think, negative connotation that some groups of people project onto forms of divination.
Yeah. Should we talk about our experience at the Ouija Board Museum?
So basically, we went to the Salem Witch Board Museum in Salem, Massachusetts, which you, Beckie, have a relationship with John, and you connected us all and were able to get us in there for a really cool experience where it was just us four in there. John talked us through the history of the museum, the Ouija board, and his own personal collection.
We're at the Salem Witch Board Museum with John, the owner.
Good to have you. Thanks for coming in.
This here is John. He is the owner of the Salem Witch Board Museum and co-founder of the Talking Board Historical Society. We spent some time with John in the Salem Witch Board Museum prior to our investigation, and he told us some really cool history about Ouija boards, his own personal history in collecting Ouija boards. Unfortunately, the audio here is not perfect or crystal clear, so I'm going to pop in a couple of times to give you some supplemental information and just make sure you understand the history, the mystery, and the spooky that John provided us with. So if you're watching YouTube, you can see John is walking us through his museum's collection. He has antique boards, some really cool rare finds to pop culture versions like the Ozzy Osbourne board, and even a Stranger Things board that was sent to him by someone who said, please take this away from me because some horrifying things started happening after using the board. And this is a common. People from all over the world actually send John boards because of some haunting things that they experience. But in order to find out those stories, you'll have to go to the museum yourself and have John tell you all about it in person.
So yeah, when people first come in, I'm going to kind of give them a lowdown as really how there's no inventor of the boards. You know, the generic name, spirit board, talking board, witch board, Ouija's a brand. But that Ouija brand was made by Parker Brothers here in Salem. So there's a lot of local history to the board here.
So John's here telling us that the Ouija board wasn't born from a single inventor. It emerged from two separate spirit communication tools that collided in the mid-1800s. People have been using divination and forms of divination for centuries, and the Ouija board is a brand. But during and after the Civil War, people sought comfort in communicating with the dead, We've heard of the spiritualist movement. They used alphabet boards. They did tapping, knocking.
So I use Bob is the go-to spirit. I always make a joke. You're asking what his name is. You were listening back originally for that was Bob. So it takes a long time.
That's a lot of effort.
They speed it up by just really an alphabet board, but now they point to the alphabet, wait for the knock. Ask his name, point to the A, point to the B, hear a knock. Point to the O, hear a knock. Still takes a very long time.
And eventually added planchettes with wheels and pencils for automatic writing.
Part of what you see with the Ouija board today, but they would have a pencil at the front and wheels in the back. And the device works by a medium just channeling a spirit to themselves and then writing or drawing on a piece of paper, whatever came through. That device is much older. It existed in France as early as 1853, and it came to America. It crossed paths with the alphabet board. So really no inventor, two separate spirit communication tools, eventually crossing paths. They're homemade up until 1890, and that's when a businessman down in Baltimore, Charles Kennard, he actually produces the one I have laying flat in the center of the case here. That's the oldest one in the room from 1890. He called it a witch board originally. A few months later, a woman named Helen Peters, over on the right-hand side.
But a medium named Helen Peters asked the board what it wanted to be called, and it spelled out OUIJA and claimed that it meant good luck.
Board named itself. Ouija became the first mass-produced board. And like I said, it's a brand like Kleenex to tissues. Ouija is the talking boards. The story gets a little confusing from there. The TBHS, Talking Board Historical Society, uncovered Helen's story only 11 years ago. She was written out of history.
Thanks to researchers like John and the Talking Board Historical Society, Helen Peters' story is finally being restored. Naturally, Corinne and I were curious. How did he get into collecting boards? And John told us his story.
I inherited my grandmother's board in the late 90s, and she would use it alone. She flew on it and yell out letters and numbers quicker than people would write down what she was saying. But hers looks very much like, I think, what most people would think about, the Parker Brothers kind of looking board with the couples in the corners. But at that time, I went online to learn more about it, and I ended up finding a few websites that had talking boards with dozens, if not hundreds, of different boards. And that's really what made me start collecting them. But it took about 6 years before I met my friend Calvin down in Connecticut through a Craigslist ad looking for boards. Then a few months later, I met my friend Murch. And over time, we eventually started a group called the Talking Board Historical Society, which is a registered nonprofit who research, preserve, study the history of these boards.
So do you have any criteria for your own personal collection?
Well, I'm a very obsessed collector, but the way I rationalize my collection is I think of it as two collections. I think of what I'm most interested in, what I hunt down, what I really want to get, and then what I want to have in a museum to talk about. Because, I might not be interested in an Ozzy Osbourne board in my collection, but I think it's a very important piece to have in a museum because it really shows you the pop culture influence that these boards have. So that's how I rationalize having the collection I do. I have two collections. Well, I have a second museum in Baltimore, and give or take about 600 boards at my house. Yeah, it's a lot. It's like a record store. You kind of flip through and look to see what I have.
So
in the museum, there are 4 boards specifically that were donated because the previous owners had had a bad experience with them, and they donated them to the Talking Board Historical Society. So I have those on display. And then some of those boards invoke people feeling pressure or wanting to leave the museum, getting sick, passing out. Those kind of things have happened. And then in general, the space has been known for paranormal activity, where a lot of things have been felt and claimed here.
And then he left the 3 of us to our own devices.
We all brought with us different pieces of equipment. And one piece of equipment that we had brought with us, Beckie, you don't normally use, which was the REM pod.
Yeah.
But do you feel differently about the REM pod after the investigation? Because we were getting a lot of responses, I think, like in response to what we were asking with the REM pod. Part of my memory of our investigation was just how many times where you were like, okay, can you stop? Or like, can you do this if you want this? And I feel like it was really responsive.
Okay. Oh, I just got like full chills. Like much colder.
If that was you, can you touch that again, just so we know it's you?
I don't even know what that one is.
Can you take a step back from that? Thank you.
Yeah, I don't hate REM pods, and I don't want to give that illusion, but there's a lot of equipment that it's going to go off regardless. And I think people, because they ask the question and then something happens, they assume it's confirmation bias. So I can take that as like a little kernel of our investigation and look at it and piece it together and say, okay, but when we put it all together, this starts to make sense.
Mhm.
So when we're interacting in that moment, I was asking and we were getting it to stop, but we can't say it's a spirit or not, but it
Right.
would suggest from what we were experiencing that it was being triggered. We were asking it to stop triggering it to test to see if it was just being triggered on accident, and it seemed to interact with that, whatever it was.
Right.
I will say I've never really felt like that museum is haunted, but I've heard that it was. I've heard that people have had experiences there.
Mhm.
And that was the first time that I had felt like, oh, I'm seeing this more so as like a living thing that has all of these different stories brought together, rather than just a museum of objects that are static. So it felt like we were interacting with something in there.
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway was like walking in and being in that museum, in that space. I didn't feel like it was haunted in the sense that like everyone who comes in here is going to have a terrifying experience, or there's for sure a ghost going to be like whispering in everyone's ear as they walk in, but that like people who come in there bring stuff with them. Salem itself has so much going on. The three of us potentially have energy that we're carrying with us and bring with us. And it didn't feel like we were speaking with or communicating with like a resident of the museum.
That's how I felt too. It did feel almost like we were just capturing someone who might have been passing through that night or just like overheard us
and wanted to scare us.
I don't know.
What did you think?
The main thing that happened that was strange, and I'm not entirely convinced it was an outside person yet, I would agree that it was like some passing energy or a collection of passing energy rather than it would be like the museum's ghost that lurks around after hours. It didn't seem to really kind of point towards any one person or anything. It just seemed like there's something interacting, or it was the three of us creating something to interact with.
Right. Okay, so after John toured us through, we sat down on the couch and set some intentions. We pulled out some of our equipment. And really the only equipment that I think went off was the REM pod.
Well, no, Becky, you were having, what was the device you had that was?
So, yeah, I have an EMF reader. That one that was, you could see actually the different energies. So it had the radio, it had the EMF and the EF that it was reading. And you could see those energies kind of cyclically fluctuating and aligning with the REM pod. So that's where it becomes more compelling, because if you have this REM pod in the corner and it's going off, and then you also see the same energy spikes happening, 6 feet away on the floor, like nowhere near that. So if we were saying that's being falsely triggered, then why are those same energies kind of passing and then hitting over there? So that was interesting. And then the other thing that I was using was a motion detector. So that you have these little lights. They were kind of interacting with that. And there were times where we were just seeing a pulse. So it just
Which those are fun to just like play with.
Yeah. I know. I just wanted to like touch it.
Yeah.
But I couldn't. The ghost had to. It was for them, not for me.
And then we did, as we've already led up to, we used a Ouija board, and also simultaneously, like this was something we just jumped in. We used the Ouija board and did Estes Method simultaneously.
We've talked about the Estes Method before, but basically it's a form of communication used in paranormal investigations to communicate with spirits or entities, and it combines sensory deprivation with a spirit box. So basically one person will wear noise-canceling headphones that are plugged into the spirit box, and usually they use a blindfold to block any visual distractions. Unfortunately, we didn't have one, so we all closed our eyes and had the noise-canceling headphones on. Then the other people asked questions out loud, and only the person wearing the headphones listened to the spirit box saying any words or phrases out loud. Basically, it reduces any confirmation bias and suggestibility and makes any relevant or direct responses even more compelling.
Yeah, so I had thought about that for a while, and I felt like we had planned this, and if we had just gone into the Ouija board, there's so much pressure on the planchette and getting it to move, and you get really frustrated when it doesn't. I thought, wouldn't it be nice if someone was kind of just in a trance while doing that? Maybe we could get a little bit more fluidity there because the person's already entering their subconscious and seeing where that went. And It was way harder than I thought. And you both tested it out, and I was like, wow, I'm trying to focus on not doing this, listen to this. And I did feel kind of like torn into two places at once. And I'm sure you would agree, where it was like, I don't know how to really get into this. But then after we did it for a little bit, I felt more in sync. But at first I was just like, what? What is happening?
Which is interesting because I feel like when you were doing it, you were actually like, Sabrina and I tried after you did. And I feel like we were not hearing things right.
It was so difficult to, I feel like you do have more experience with it. And there was this like pressure of doing multiple things at once. But like the spirits were probably very frustrated with us being like, these girls are not saying what I'm trying to say.
No. Yeah.
No, and I will say the first couple of times I did that, I was also feeling like this isn't making sense. And my friends would do it and they're pulling out these words and it just seems like they can instantly, they're out and they're saying things. And it does take experience to learn how to tune out that and just focus on what's in between the noise.
Right.
And not just hearing the radio or anything, because you're really supposed to just almost, it feels like kind of riding a wave. And that's where, like I said, when I'm doing that, I'm like, I want to let go of the planchette. I just want to lull back and forth. So trying to do two things at once was an interesting choice, but I wanted to try it.
I mean, I feel like a lot happened, especially when you were, Beckie, doing the Estes Method.
Yeah, I think that one of the goals of that was, okay, people can accuse us of saying we're moving it ourselves and getting the answers and we're making things happen. But if there's the element of the Estes happening where I'm hearing through the spirit box and I can't hear what you're even asking, and it's lining up and we're getting some sort of response that lines up. And as you know, it all kind of led up to a strange situation, whatever it was.
You know what? Let's just jump right into the clips here and debrief after you watch what exactly happened. And also, as a note, if people want to watch the full session of the Estes Method and the Ouija board session that we did, Beckie will be posting it on her socials at MyBloodyGalentine, and we will also post it on our Patreon. Okay, let's jump into it.
What I thought is we could do Ouija, and I will listen to the spirit box with the noise-canceling headphones. And it could just not work also.
Yeah.
Have you used a Ouija board?
I have. I had when I was really young.
How do you feel
like when
about
I was
them?
like 8.
I'm open to using them.
In this setting, I'm oddly going to say yes.
What?
Which I always was like, I'm not going to use one, but this feels like a science experiment. And
Beckie, you're the
like
lucky
science.
charm. I like science.
Well, I think that if you're going to use one, this is probably the best.
Place to use it? Yes.
Yeah, safest place probably.
Yeah.
So before I do this, actually, what I like to do is a figure 8, just to kind of get it rolling, since I won't be able to talk with the headphones. So you're just going to do this, and then start asking and see what happens. And if it doesn't move, doesn't move. And my eyes will be closed, so
Okay.
It's all on you.
We'll see you later.
dang. Okay.
Okay.
Start the figure 8.
Are there any spirits here?
Weirdo. 40.
Would you like to use this one right now?
I don't know.
That's okay. You don't have to use the board, but if you would like to communicate with us, you could just use the energy from our fingers to move the planchette.
I'm cold in here. The door.
It's cold outside. Are you touching the REM pod? The spirit over by the REM pod, you can communicate using words through the equipment at Beckie's.
What is that? Feel a breeze on my arm. Yes.
Do you live in Salem? Where are you from?
Nosy.
Nosy?
Oh my god.
Holy shit. That scared the shit out of me.
I just felt you like grab my hand. No, I can't hear anything.
The door that's inside this whole time is like, I don't know if someone's
On the other
next
side?
to it.
Oh, that freaked me out. Did you hear any of that?
I just felt you grab my hand.
I'm grabbing your knee. We're both like,
And I hadn't even noticed or thought about that at some point leading up to the sound that we heard that I had said the door.
Right.
Like I don't remember. That's how like unconscious I am.
We didn't remember either.
No,
I mean, it
you
wasn't
found it when you were
until-
going through the footage.
And I was like, jaw dropped. I was like, oh my gosh. Because
Of all things to say.
I'm cold in here. The door.
And in that
Yeah.
moment, like, when you say what you feel like you're supposed to say, you're like, there's no way I'm supposed to be saying this. I'm doing it wrong. This is not right.
Mhm.
And when it lined up afterwards to what happened, I
Yeah.
just felt like that is so weird. Of all things
I
that I
know.
could have said, why would I even say that?
I
Right.
feel like we were also distracted too, because after you had said that, there were like a couple more questions that Sabrina and I had asked about this person.
do you live in Salem? Where are you from?
Nosy.
Nosy?
Whoever was communicating said nosy. And so we were kind of like laughing at that. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden, boom, the door next to us, bang, bang. So it was just like one big boom. And that was like a back alley where the trash cans had been kept, but it wasn't trash day. Like we had confirmed with John after.
Yeah, we confirmed it. And I'm under. So I feel my hand get squeezed. And then also, I don't know how to explain it, but that was like a boom enough that you felt it in the air.
Yes.
Like
Yeah.
it just felt like it shifted air into the room. I don't know how, and it was so loud.
So loud.
It was like a metal door almost. Like it was so loud.
Like if that door were here and I'm like, my eyes are closed, I can't hear anything, I would have felt that almost like a truck driving by. I was
Right.
like, why did I feel that like on my back? And
Right.
I was like, oh, someone just knocked on the door. That's funny. Like when you had explained, and then when we asked John, he said, they already took the trash. Like that doesn't make sense. And it's like to go where you needed to go to bang on that door, unless someone knew we were in there doing that, which they wouldn't have.
Mm-mm.
You know, and John is not the type of person, regardless of his beliefs, he would never
No.
mess with people in order to like kind of mess with an investigation.
We would have heard him moving out of because he sat in the office, which is like just steps away from where
Yeah.
we were.
Yeah.
We would have heard him or seen him move.
And on top of it, if he had coordinated with someone outside for whatever reason, I don't know, he was mad at me. Like he would have had to say, okay, when they talk about the door by chance in the investigation, I need you to go bang on the door as loud as possible and scare them. Like
Right.
it's just not, it's not realistic. And so after getting shook up by that,
And like literally me grabbing you, literally shook up.
yeah, no, like we all look like.
And I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna play the clip for everyone multiple times. And I slowed it down I'm going to do it from multiple angles so you can really see the full experience.
The full terror.
Yeah, of what happened.
Oh my God.
Holy shit.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
But I do feel like you two were very much like, it's got to be a person. And I was like, I don't think so. Because especially after because Beckie, you put the headphones back on and did the Estes method more, and we were using the Ouija board. And I was like, was that you? And it said yes. Like the Ouija board went to yes.
I think you asked if it was a person.
Was that a person outside at the back door? Oh my God.
Was that you?
Me.
You scared us. Congratulations, if that's what you were trying to do.
Good.
Good.
I'm violent.
And then like I asked if it liked to scare us, and it did. Like it was happy that it scared us. And that leads me into like, it did really feel like trickster energy, because not only did this moment happen, which was startling to all of us and also funny because I feel like it made us like and laugh for a moment, but then the board kept going to 2 letters that usually they say, if you see this, you want to close out. And I just felt like it was an energy trying to be scary, but not actually scary. Like I didn't feel
wasn't
scared.
perfectly on the letters, but it was close enough.
And it kept going back and forth.
Looked up at you, Sabrina, because Beckie, you were doing the Estes method. I looked at Sabrina and I was like, because I was like, of course. I have always said like, oh, I'm not going to do a Ouija board again because I used them when I was a little kid. And I was like, I'm not going to do them again. And then I was like, of course, I choose to do it. We're sitting here and like the classic Ouija board demon comes through.
You scared us. Congratulations, if that's what you were trying to do.
Good.
Good.
I'm violent.
You are not welcome here if you are violent. Is that you over by the REM pod?
I'm here.
Do you want us to stay?
I'd be glad.
Do you still want to communicate using the board?
Yep. Important.
It's important what you have to share with us.
Hi.
Not you. Not you. You're not allowed to be here.
You'll deal with it.
No, I won't.
No, we will not. We're
going to say goodbye if you continue to be here. You have to move
I'm bad.
Yeah, we are going to stop communicating with you.
Important.
If it's important, then you will respect our boundaries.
I feel like there's like a trickster ghost.
Yeah.
Are you playing pranks on us?
Harry.
Is your name Harry?
Oh, yeah.
Harry, are you alone here?
I don't think.
Like, really?
And then also, Beckie, when the ZO started happening, we were like, we're not going to communicate with you. We're going to say goodbye.
I think we just said, we're like, nope, not you.
But
moving on.
But Beckie, you in the Estes method, like said a few comments that were almost like combative, like too bad. That's like what you're going to do. And we're like, no, it's not. And it almost felt like we were fighting the spirit.
We were bickering.
That's why I felt like something like that could happen, because John stands there all day talking to people and they come in and they're like, have you ever heard of this? And spirits are going to get that idea. Like, this is what we're supposed to do. This is what people are most interested in. This is their worst fear. Oh, I would never use one because of that. And that happened. And for me, it is actually very good that I was not conscious for that, because I would have started to feel like in my head about it and like, why is this happening? Are they messing with me? I'm so like adamantly against that. Like, so the fact that I couldn't see or be involved with it was for the better because you had an authentic experience that wasn't affected by my bias.
I mean, Corinne and I looked at each other and we were like, you're not moving it, right? And then we were like, we don't think Beckie would do this either. Like, but you know, it was the first time we met.
Blindfolded and trying to focus on words through the Estes method.
Yeah.
I know that was all very confusing, but I will say I do agree with you, Beckie, that you were saying like a spirit, and you, Sabrina, like a spirit could have overheard it. Like this is what they're learning that are people's greatest fears, or this is what the expectation is. So they're like,
if
there's something
ghost,
performative in doing it. But after Sabrina and I bickered with the spirits that you were channeling, Beckie, it did kind of go back. It was like, oh shit, okay, well, like I can't. This trick didn't work, or like they're not interested in this act of the play. So then it
became funny, and like you started counting.
Are you alone here?
I don't think. 4.
Have you spent a long time in Salem in the afterlife?
5, 6. Go on. 8.
Good job. You missed 7. Did 7, 8, 9? You liked my joke? Yes. Thank you.
Butthole.
And it laughed at our joke. And I think like the things that you said in the Estes method, I think the REM pod went off almost like as a haha.
Yeah, and I think we're like, oh, did you enjoy that dad joke or something? And then there was confirmation that, yeah, they did enjoy a good dad joke.
And the board went to yes. And then I think it called us clowns or something like that.
I will say that the number it skipped was 7. And this is interesting because if you are into spooky internet spaces, there has been a girl on TikTok who's been communicating with the Ouija board with her husband for 10 years. And she's communicating with an entity called 7.
What?
I got chills.
And this entity has told her that sneaking up on us is this date at the end of May where something is going to happen. And the last time, the first contact was on this specific day and the second contact was on this specific day.
What's supposed to happen?
The reason this is interesting is because I came forward and I thought I know everything. And I made a video and said, I think this is confirmation bias and idiomotor effect. This girl is probably just talking with her subconscious. And, you know, she's getting specific days. Like if it says April 14th, 1944, what happened on this day? And then she Googles what happened this day. And she's finding whatever it is and saying, oh, I was meant to find this information.
Sure.
So that was my assumption. When it skipped 7, I felt like something was like laughing at me for ignoring the entity because so many people had said that they had communicated with this entity named 7 via the Ouija board. And they said, no, you know, you're being too close-minded about this. It's not idiomotor. I have also communicated with the 7 entity. And so when it skipped 7, I was like, is this for me? Is this 7 being like, we're 7? Like, was that 7? And I would implore you to go look into the story because she has documented it for a decade and she has all of these transcripts of it. And her TikTok username, I believe, is Save7, but it's like a 7 instead of a V.
What's supposed to happen at the end of May?
She's not sure. She just feels compelled, like a moral responsibility to share this finding.
I'm scared.
She's pretty genuine and very normal otherwise. Like, it's not someone that you're like, of course you would say that.
Right.
But it was kind of like a moment where I was like, of course it would say that. But it's a reminder of not allowing your skepticism to like overtake everything. And sometimes you debunk things to the bone and you're like, no, there's no way. And sometimes I think I need to be more open. So,
well, this episode comes out end of May. So we'll see. We'll all be privy to if something happens. Maybe it aligns with this episode coming out.
Maybe that's what he was talking about.
It's the release of our episode. Wow.
There were a lot of people that did say they were thankful that I posted like another perspective of it because they are scared. It's frightening when it almost becomes like end of the world stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because it says, so 7 refers to past catastrophic events, the atomic bombing in Hiroshima, the Bay of Pigs incident.
Yep.
It is suggesting that the third contact will occur May 27th, my wedding anniversary, 2025, leading to global devastation of
Guess
some
what
kind.
day this episode comes out?
No, are you fucking kidding me?
May 27th.
I have chills.
Tuesday, May 27th is when this episode comes out.
Because we do our collabs usually like the last Tuesday of every month. We got to change it.
Wow, everyone hold on to your butts.
Ew,
Damn.
I hate that.
I mean, this is another thing that I've loved about every investigation that we're doing is you don't always have all of the pieces as it happens. It's not until you review footage, it's not until you all get back together and talk about it that more things come up. Like we never would have known this context of the number 7 and the importance it has to you, Beckie.
And I think that's where I am the worst. And when I'm in the moment, I think this means nothing. And as soon as I heard that back, I was like, oh, that was definitely the number I was meant to.
Oh my
skip.
gosh.
But it happens a lot where I'm the first to say, it's not making sense. We're not getting anything. And it's like, no, it's pieces of a puzzle. It's layers. Like you have to look at it that way. What are the chances that the episode is going to release on the day that the 7 incident is going to happen and we skip the number 7? After I said that 7 was not true.
You know, after we finish recording, I was supposed to do some work and I was going to do it down here, but I'm scared and I'm gonna crawl into bed with my partner and do it upstairs next to his sleeping body.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much, Beckie. We had such a great time doing this. And in this episode, like in tandem with us talking, we'll have aired some clips from the night. But Beckie, you're going to post the Estes Method session on your socials, right?
Yeah. And everyone can see us being frightened.
Yep.
And they can see what we're talking about with the 7, which I think most people are going to say, oh, why did you skip that number? Because it's like, that's interesting too, because if it were identifying itself and it's counting and it skips it, it's like it almost, that is the way 7 communicates, is in between the lines rather than saying I am 7. So yeah, I will post that and share it just before the episode airs so everyone can get a chance to see what we experienced and our emotions in real time.
Yeah, before the catastrophic event
of May 27th.
Oh, yeah. We have to do it before May 27th.
Oh man. But so I'm like curious if other people listening pick up on things that, you know, maybe we didn't. Mm-hmm. It's always good to have an outside perspective too.
That's why I love sharing things on social media. I used to be like overly critical and now I want to put it out there because those people watching stuff, they'll notice things. They'll say at 7 minutes, 21 seconds, I saw a black figure go in the background.
Right.
And I would have never seen that. And there have been times they've seen things that I would have never noticed because you kind of fly through it. So some people may say you rush to put evidence out there. But for me, I'm like, what better than 1 million eyes on that evidence?
100%.
I agree with that.
And I also feel like because, like, especially like when I was listening back in preparation for this, I was so focused on the moment of the door and what the Ouija board and what you were saying in that moment that I wasn't fully listening for, are there any EVPs, like auditory experiences that I just wasn't paying attention to that other people pick up on? We'll find out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happens when something big happens, that it almost kind of, you forget to look at what built up to it or like analyzing those numbers and other things that we experienced.
Well, can you tell everyone where to find you and if there's anything exciting that you have coming up that people can look forward to and we can look forward to?
I am on TikTok and Instagram as MyBloodyGalentine. Right now, I'm making a human, so things are a little different, but I'll still be traveling and lecturing in the fall and doing, Strange Escapes with Amy Bruni in Gettysburg, which I'm really excited for. So.
Ooh, fun.
So fun. Oh my gosh.
Amazing. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And we will
see you on the other side.